to start putting the walls, right, on this thing. So I've got a piece of cardboard. I've cut several pieces already, pre-cut, just because I wanted to save a little bit of time on this video. I've cut them to 6 inches tall, and that's a fine height for you to use on yours as well. Because that is plenty of space for the proscenium arch that we are going to use. So I've already cut my 2 side pieces. I haven't cut my front and my back piece to length yet. Obviously, you want to make sure that you think about like what's going where. So if this is my front and this is my back, I want my 2 side pieces to fit in between there. I need to adjust for the thickness of this material when I cut my side pieces. But I'm going to set that aside. Oops. Well, sort of set that aside. And I want to make sure that I've got a good square edge because I've got things that are going to make corners. And if I'm going to make corners, I want them to meet up. So cut that square. And then I'm going to take this. Now I can do one of 2 things. I can either just put this down here. This is the easy way to do it. And put this, put this edge right along this edge. Mark how wide that is there. Same thing up here. Put that there. Line that up there. Mark it. And now I know how wide that piece needs to be. I could also measure my base. That would be the more accurate way of doing it. But sometimes, you go with the way that's quicker. So cut this to length. And then I'm going to double check. I'm going to double check a couple things. I'm going to double check that it fits across the back here, which it does. I'm also going to double check and see and just make sure that it also is the same width as my front. Because if it is, then I can use this piece to cut my other front piece, my proscenium arch piece. So again, I'm just going to make a nice square, make sure I'm starting with a nice square end. The good thing about using foam core for this part of it is that you can assume that your edges are relatively square, unless you've been cutting into it already, in which case maybe not. Line that up. And I'm going to just draw a line. And cut this. Okay. Now I have my front, my back, and my sides. I, however, do still need to cut an arch for my proscenium. Okay, so again, I've got a couple of different options. I can measure things and do it that way, or I can just lay this down on top of this. This is going to be my front piece. I can mark where the edges of the proscenium are. So on this particular drawing, the edges of the proscenium are right there on the edge of the apron, which makes it really easy. So I'm going to make a mark there, make a mark there. And now I'm going to realize that Kathy has told me that the proscenium arch should be 20 feet tall. And I don't have a scale ruler, but because I can do math and 1/4 of an inch equals 1 foot, I know that this needs to be 5 inches tall to get a 2 scale 20 foot tall proscenium, because 20/4 of an inch is 5 inches. I hope that made sense. (20 inches equals 5 inches. So I'm going to measure there. I like to draw this out before I cut it, just in case. Sometimes I draw something out, I measure it, I draw it, I look at it, and I'm like, there is no way that that is square. So I have to go back and double check it, and I'll be darned if I'm not incredibly wrong. So in this particular case, this actually looks a little, yep, And what happened was I didn't adjust for the end of the ruler. So that is a little too tall. This is why we double check things. Measure one, measure twice, cut once, right? We've all been told that. That looks better. See, even I mess up things. But it's really much better to mess them up before you cut them than after. So now I have my proscenium arch drawn out, and now I can cut that. And you might want to save your little scrap pieces of cardboard that you cut out of things, because you can use them for walls and things later. Yep, cutting across the corrugation is definitely harder than cutting with it. So there I have my proscenium arch. Now, this is all made out of cardboard, which isn't just the prettiest surface in the world. If you have nice clean cardboard like this, I actually don't mind if you just leave it plain, but if you have cardboard that has print on it, if you have cardboard that is marked up, if it's just not in very good shape, I suggest either painting it or adding a layer of black paper or something like that, or even white paper would be fine. Just something to give you a nice neutral surface, because you don't want your model box to detract from the model that's in it. So now I can assemble. And this is the tricky part, because now you have to get things to stand up. Stand up all together. So I'm going to try and clear out my nozzle of my tacky glue here. There we go, maybe. I usually end up with a bunch of straight pins glued to my work surface because I've used them to either clean out glue or apply glue. This is a little flimsy, but I'm thinking that once I get it up here, it's going to be fine. If I get it up here and it still feels really wonky, I might reinforce it. This is pretty thin corrugated cardboard, but I think it's going to work. So I'm going to put some glue on the bottom edge. Usually I have a coffee cup because the tacky glue is really, really thick. So I usually have a coffee cup with my tacky glue sitting upside down in it, so that it doesn't, so it all stays down by the tip. And I'm going to stick that on there. Now this isn't going to want to stand up by itself at all, but that's okay, because that's why we have glue bottles and other things. Sort of lean it up against. Maybe. Okay, you want to go that way? Fine. Go that way. I can take my next piece, and I'm going to make, this one has some print on it. I'm going to say that I want the print to be on the inside, because hopefully then nobody will really see it. I'm going to glue up edge here, and glue this edge here. At some point, it actually does matter which two edges you glue. The first one, it doesn't. And I'm going to stick this on here, on there, and just hold that together just enough so that it doesn't want to pop back apart. If I need to, I can put a little tape in that corner. And I'm going to use this kind of tape. Just to hold it in place And if I'm careful and I don't use gobs and gobs of tape, no one will ever notice that I have a little tape there. And that's kind of wanting to float away from the edge, so I'm going to put a little tape there too. I'm just using tape to kind of hold things in place. You can do this with masking tape and then try and take it off later. Sometimes what happens though is with masking tape, it just, it glues itself, it gets glue on it and then it's glued to the thing and you do more damage by trying to pull it off than you would just leaving it on. But again, you can kind of see I'm trying to put my tape in places where, you know, anybody looking at this won't see it. I'm not putting it on the face of the model because I don't want people to see that I have taped it together. And now I can glue up my next piece. Put that in position. Trying to get everything lined up as absolutely accurately as I can. I've been doing this for a year or two, so my ability to line things up is possibly slightly greater than some of yours. That's okay. Do your best. Just as you're approaching this, just as you're doing it, continually look at this thing and say, does it look sloppy? Because there's a difference between just not knowing how to do something and not taking care in doing something. If you are having challenges in doing it because, you know, it's a challenging project, then that's one thing. If you're just doing it in a hurry, that's a whole nother thing. So my back piece is the last piece that's going to go on. It's got a lot of printing on it. I really don't want that facing into the inside of my model box. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this one on the clean side because nobody is going to look at the back of my model. If you're doing this with cardboard and you decide you want to paint it, I recommend actually painting it first before you assemble it. Cardboard sometimes warps when you paint it, especially if you paint it with a really wet paint. And so you can paint it, and then once it's dry, you can kind of, you know, sit a couple of books on top of it overnight or something so that it has a chance to flatten itself back out. And this goes here. And that goes there. And I'm going to need a little something to keep that in place. So I'm going to go, and because this is in the back of my model box, I think it's going to be okay if I'm going to do this in a little bit different way just to show you. I'm going to take some painter's tape or masking tape. You could do this with regular tape too, but you just want something that, really want something that probably won't stick so bad. So you kind of go over the corner like that. And that will hold that in place until the glue dries, and then I can take that off and I'll have a nice clean corner that doesn't have any tape in it. But again, you want to use some kind of tape that's not going to like pull the paper off your cardboard. So regular Scotch tape will probably pull that apart and that won't look so nice. So now we have our nice little proscenium theater stage. Okay, so that ends that part of the process, and I will be back with another section on how to actually build the set for the model.